Good morning. Hi, I am Kelby, your co-host with Things You Ought to Know.
And I'm Erica, your other co-host.
Well, we're excited. It's a good old Friday here. It's Friday morning. We're going to be dropping this episode later today once I can get it edited. But mom life.
Yes.
Speaking of, how has your week been?
Oh, how's my week been? It has been good overall. There are a lot of things going on in my life right now personally, but we'll get into that at some point later on down the road in this season. But right now I'm just gonna kind of keep it close to home.
Yeah.
And for Luca, we are actually seeing some exciting things for him. He has like really taken on to doing more. Like he does it, it's like an approximation to more, like for signing, but he is doing that as well as thank you, the signs, and like doing them pretty appropriately.
Can I stop you really quick? That approximation is somewhat of like a clinical term. Can you kind of, if you're listening and not watching us, what does that mean?
So it's like not the actual like exact ASL or baby sign language of like the more sign where you kind of like put your fingers together and tap them together. He kind of like almost like just tap like almost like he's gonna clap, but he just taps like top of his fingers together.
Okay.
Sometimes they'll even clap, but like he is doing it in the appropriate context for like I want more kind of thing.
Yay, Luca.
So yeah, we're finally seeing that, and he's continuing to make strides with his AAC device, and so yeah, we're seeing a lot of great progress and like minimal tantrums, like just a happy baby.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's right on time too for summer. He'll be a happy baby for summer.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. He is outside. I think because the weather's been so nice this week, he's outside. He's like happy.
And that's when our kids are the happiest, I think. I always say like if Porter's body is in motion, his brain is in motion, and you're going to get the most out of him. He like play therapy style is his best approach with him.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. Which is like for Porter, he has had a great week. We've seen a lot of progress. I want to dive into it a little bit more. So I'll just tease you with it that we are starting to see some signs that he wants to verbalize his communication. So there's been I have a little clip that I'd love to share on our next one. We can dedicate more time to it. But he has like randomly just like out of nowhere has started to like mimic our words.
Wow.
And
that's huge.
It still sounds somewhat like gibberish sometimes, but it is the cutest and most like I'm just crying all the time, I feel like, because it's like he's literally talking, like he's trying to talk.
Oh my gosh, that's the best.
I know. I didn't know if this, again, I don't want to get into it too much, but I just didn't know if this day would ever come. And now that it's here, I have a little bit of like, I think I have a little bit of PTSD from the regression the first time where he had the words and then he regressed and we didn't hear him ever again. So I'm just like every day, all day, I'm trying to like just build on what he's already doing right now.
Yeah.
But it's been a fun week. It's been a good week. We were out with the flu and then I went to Vegas.
Whoa.
Yeah.
How was that? Who won? You or Vegas?
Vegas won. Vegas won.
Vegas won, Kelby 0.
Yes. It was so fun. I got off the plane, and as we were getting off of it, this older gentleman that was talking to the women in front of him was saying, don't forget what happens in Vegas ends up on Instagram. And I was like, I've never heard that. That's so clever. It's so true, too.
Very true. Well, I'm glad you had fun and like a little getaway.
I had a good time. Dad stayed home with the boys. Michael was he's always so good with that. And they did really good. They had a little bro weekend. So it was a good little relaxing time for me. Yes. I turned 30.4. That's what I tell people is 30.4.
That's right.
Not 34.
That's right. Absolutely. I love it.
But it was a good birthday weekend.
Good.
Got to celebrate with the kids.
I love it.
Yeah. So we both had good weeks. I love that for us.
Yes. Yeah, we did.
Well, then last week we talked about our take on the Elon Musk controversy.
Yes.
We didn't necessarily get a lot of comments, good or bad. So I think it's probably like good to say that it was well received. So thank you for, again, listening to us and understanding our perspective on it. We know it's not going to align with your perspective at all the times, but the fact that it was well received, we really appreciate that. But now that you have had the time,
not living under a rock,
come out of your rock, I would love to hear your take on it. That you've like we got your initial take,
Yeah.
but now that you've been able to do a little bit of more research and dive into it on your own, what are your thoughts?
Yeah. So I want to at some point, like, or I definitely want to like explain my perspective because obviously it sparked my curiosity. So of course I had to go at least watch a clip. And I watched from like the time he walked out all the way until that gesture was made, which I mean, or within the clip, it was, you know, like a less than a 1 minute clip. He was literally almost flapping.
Yeah.
I mean, all of his movements were very rigid and like he doesn't have those nice instrumental gestures where it's like, you know, instrumental gestures are like when you talk with your hands and it's natural looking. Like, you know, people with autism, they may be talking and they're just like rolling their hand in a circular pattern because they've seen that and they're trying to make it look natural, but it's very awkward looking and, you know, it's very awkward. When he was kind of like trying to like get the crowd like pumped up, it looked more like flapping.
I agree.
To me than it looked like I'm trying like that normal like instrumental. I'm trying to get the crowd, you know, up on their feet. So there was that. There was like several times where he was like just trying to like direct attention somewhere before those gestures were made, and like it was just a very like his body language is very rigid. And I think the way that was done, he also open-handed put his hand on his heart. And it is very normal for people with autism, level 1, level 2, level 3. Obviously, Elon Musk is level 1. And again, I believe Elon Musk knows how to isolate his index finger and point. However, it is very normal like to not understand that open-handedness of the gesture instead of like it just being closed-handed. To him, it probably means the exact same thing. And again, it's awkward. Yes, it looked very awkward. But I really did not take that to be anything more than that's an awkward, non-instrumental, but attempting to be instrumental gesture.
Yeah.
And that was not the only one that looked awkward. Again, if you look at the very beginning, I think that speaks for itself. It literally looked like he was flapping. And he was like trying to like dance and like kind of jump with it. And it more just looked like toe walking and flapping. It looked very awkward to me from the get-go. And not not a critical way of saying that. I just, in defense of that one gesture, all of his gestures looked very awkward.
Yeah,
so,
it's Elon Musk. It's like,
yeah.
that's where I'm like, people, come on, it's Elon Musk.
Right.
Like, and maybe it's because I'm a little bit of like I have followed him and his, you know, endeavors and kind of kept up to date with him. So it's like, I've seen him even at his Tesla launches, like how he gets hyped with the crowd and he does like his own version of flapping. And this is a pure assumption and I could be wrong. So I apologize, Elon, if I'm wrong. But I almost felt like you're seeing a grown man masking, but also the flapping coming through that
And
masking in excitement. Right. Like it pierces through, which it rightfully show it's organically who he is.
Right, exactly.
That is his happiest spot is when he is flapping, when his hand is moving. So go for it,
or
by
like
all
in
means.
an anxious state,
right?
With like a huge crowd watching you, like that social anxiety.
Yeah,
it was socially very awkward.
Yeah,
the whole thing.
If you see have you watched any of his stuff like ever?
I went back after.
Okay,
yeah. So I really kind of came out from under my rock when it comes to Elon Musk a little bit because I was like, let me see a couple of his interviews, like let me see a couple of his like social media posts, and like it was just very to me like the man obviously I'm sure he has like an agent and like a publicist. I'm sure he does like have a team of people who try to kind of guide
I just
him.
wonder if
really
he does.
Elon Musk does whatever Elon Musk wants to do and they can like coach him, but in that moment Elon Musk is gonna like
Elon's going Elon.
Elon's going
Elon.
Yeah, like I really just am kind of like dumbfounded that people like I and again I apologize if I'm offending anybody, but to me it seemed very like this is obviously not the only awkward gesture we did. Now we can pick on this one if we want to, but like look from the very beginning, the man is flapping. I mean, like, and again, that's not a critical statement. Again, like you said, that is his organically who he is, and it's great because that is who he is. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. But he was flapping.
Yeah, he was flapping.
I mean, and I'm watching it and I'm going like, if I was doing a diagnostic I would count that as flapping.
Oh yeah.
I would be like putting my R for repetitive behavior right beside that for however many seconds he was doing it. Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Just his energy, like when he comes onto the stage too, sometimes like that's when you see a lot of the flapping. Like he's done like a, just jumping up and down.
Yes.
And it's just something, I appreciate him for who he is and showing himself authentically like that without the like care in the world of how other people are perceiving him. I think that is when people talk about the superpowers, quote unquote, the superpowers that autistic individuals have. I see that as your shield.
Absolutely.
You're a shield against the people, people who sometimes lack humanity and understanding. It's like his autism comes into place in those moments, I assume, again, because he lives so boldly for who he, like him.
Right. And he's in the public eye. So there's going to be positive and negative feedback all the time.
Right.
And so I think for him, it's like, yeah, like you said, that's his shield, especially in the situation, like, and living so publicly.
I relate that back to our kiddos, and tell me if you think the same, but I think of it as like Porter's shield out when we're out in the wild, like in a grocery store or anything like that. Like if he's authentically him. He is flapping, he's vocal stemming, he is, he don't have a care in the world that there are other people in this establishment that don't want to hear that, or, like it, for whatever reason, it imposes on their ability to have a good day that day. He doesn't care.
Yeah.
And I think of that as that's part of his superpower and shield. It's like his protection mechanism. Like my belief is that God built into that because it's like his way of saying like, I'm protecting you. Wear your shield every day. Like, you have these parts about you that are socially awkward, but you don't have to feel that way. Like them as individuals don't have to feel that way. And when they do, when that shield doesn't help as much, there's times throughout growing in their life where I can see that it doesn't, shield them as much as it could. I feel for them in those moments, but for now, I love that, at this age, at least with Porter being almost 6, he doesn't really care. And I pray that maybe one day when he gets a little older, he can be like an Elon where he doesn't really care and he can still authentically be himself in a world that doesn't really care for that.
Right. Yeah, I agree completely. Because, I mean, wouldn't like most people be way happier if they didn't have to, if they didn't care what other people thought? And they really were just like authentic. Like, I think there would be a lot less hate in the world. Like, not to get preachy, but like, I think the world would be a lot happier place if it wasn't like trying to keep up with the Joneses and, like everything that we all do. We all do it to some degree.
Yeah.
And so like being authentically just like happy with who you are and where you are.
It goes a long way.
It goes a long way. And that's why I think that is their superpower. Yeah. So that was my take.
Yeah, thanks for following up with us on good old Elon and your take on that. I'm excited to hear what other people, if they agree with us, if they didn't hear about it and then they watched it and then now they were able to, let us know in the comments in our Facebook group. We would love to hear from you and get your takes on it too. Again, like we said, I know it's kind of repetitive, but just to reiterate, like if we're not seeing something that you're seeing, we love an open conversation.
Yeah.
We want to, again, our platform is to tell you things that you ought to know about and vice versa.
Yep.
Tell us things that we ought to know about.
Absolutely.
Which kind of leads us into our next segment.
Yeah.
The You Ought to Know segment.
Some exciting news.
Yeah. So in this segment, sometimes again when we have guests on, this is a time frame where you'll hear from them on something you think they ought to know. Other times it's like a little news piece article that we're putting into place that we think you ought to know about. And that's what today is. We found out about some new news that's coming out in the autism world specifically for South Carolina. Okay, the nonprofit I learned about is called Just Be the Change, BEE. From my understanding, and I apologize if I tell this wrong, they are based out of South Carolina, and their founder has been lobbying for emergency services, like a standard protocol throughout the state for our children on the spectrum or any individual on the spectrum. And I wanted to kind of see your thoughts on it from a provider's perspective because it does impact you too. So can you kind of give us some little bit of information on it?
Yeah, so it is a placard that you can order from the South Carolina DMV, and you can do it online. And it basically identifies your car as having somebody in the car who is neurodivergent or autistic. And so the goal of it, to my understanding, is to allow the officers or first responders to give more inclusive care, better care, and so that they are aware upon approaching the vehicle, somebody in this vehicle is autistic. It may be the driver, it may not be the driver. And so it will be something that, as providers, we will start to see, especially if you're in the primary care world or developmental peds world. You are going to start to see these probably come across. I'm probably going to order one for my car because it just dropped yesterday.
Was it yesterday?
Was it? I think it was like the 6th or the 7th.
It was supposed to be the 25th of January, but I think it got delayed. Don't quote me on that. But either way, it's here. It's live.
And so I'm just going to read to you the instructions that Just Be the Change posted on her site. But like in kind of looking through it, this is kind of what I understood as well. So you go to the South Carolina DMV website, download a disabled license plate and placard application, and with section 4, the physician statement. So that is something you will have to give your primary care pediatrician, or your, if you're an adult, your PCP, your primary care physician, and complete a licensed physician that certifies the applicant or the child of the applicant is autistic or neurodivergent. And then submit your application form along with the form MV95, which is page 3, and you're going to select autistic or neurodivergent, and you pay $40, and then they send it to you. So it sounds like it's a pretty easy process. Again, it is the DMV, so I can't speak to anything like that,
Right?
But at least you can do it online, it sounds like, which I know for a lot of parents, like thinking about having to go down there with an autistic child is like, absolutely not. I will pass.
Yeah. I don't even want to go down there myself, let alone with a child.
No, if I have to bring a child there, like, it's out of the question. So yeah, and as far as from our standpoint, I, would have to like triple check with Dr. Shaw, but typically our policy at Tri-County Pediatrics is, as long as the child is up to date on their physicals, if they need a form filled out, we can fill it out. As long as they don't, like, the DMV does not require an actual physical within that, which it doesn't. It
doesn't state that.
It doesn't state that, and it wouldn't make any sense, especially if they're not the driver. If they're just a passenger in the car or a child. So yeah, I think that this is going to be really great, because in our first season, we highlighted some people that we wanted to kind of talk to and bring into this community was, police officers and first responders and things like that. And so this is like one step that's a tangible step to kind of let them know, okay, before I even approach the car, what can I do with whatever training I've received for autistic people to give best care in that moment? Whether it's like at night, maybe don't shine your flashlight right at them, like that might overstimulate them, and that's just like one little example. I'm sure they have some level of training, but I really am so happy and proud of South Carolina for being the first state in the nation to have something like this.
I'm very proud of our state.
Yes.
Happy Kakalakian.
Yeah.
So back to like on the clinical side of this, for someone who may not know too, it sounds like every office is going to vary with their policy, but I think it's probably safe to say, like, call or submit a message on your portal, your patient portal, to see if your provider is willing to do this without an office visit, so you don't have to worry about that pay if you have a copay or anything associated with that office visit. Time away from your job and life would cut down on it. So I would recommend, at least attempting a phone call or a portal message might get you all the way down to the finish line without having to actually step in the office.
Right. Yeah. If you can do all this from home, I mean, especially during like cold and flu season, don't bring your healthy child. And, during cold and flu season, there are longer wait times, especially at pediatric offices. So I would say, if we can get it where we don't have to worry about it, I think that's best.
Yeah. I'd imagine from the provider standpoint too, it's like, you'd much rather save that visit spot for someone who needs it in this cold and flu season rather than, paperwork that can be done outside of office.
We're booking up like by 9:30. We're booking up the day. So yes, I think it would be great if we can just do these by and like I said, Tri-County, Dr. Shaw, the owner of the practice, is typically that has been our policy for most paperworks. And I can't imagine this one would be different. I would have to triple check with him to say 100%, but I am going to let all of the providers at my office know. So Tri-County providers will be aware of this by the end of the week that, this is here. Please fill them out if you receive them, and you may get them at like triple fold here for a little while since it is brand new.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Spreading the good news.
Yay. We're proud to be South Carolinian.
Yes. I'd love to see where this grows. And we were talking before recording, but maybe it's something that we can, link up with this nonprofit and see if it's something we can partner on to get the word out and spread it for South Carolina more. But I'm curious to see if it's going to grow to attaching a diagnosis to the home address also. So if there's an emergency service and we're calling in, it immediately flags that there is a special needs individual in that home. That would be super helpful, because right now, if you're driving, if you have the license plate, it's going to, attempt to show that to them. But if you're calling 911 services, they're not looking at your license plate unless you're telling them that.
Right.
So it would be nice to see if there's a way that we can get involved and help build on this to where it's attached to the house that the individual lives in too.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That'd be good. Really good to know.
Yes. Yeah.
Our lawmakers ought to know about that. So we'll tell them.
We'll be telling them.
Yeah.
Listen in.
All right. Well, that kind of concludes our short convo for the week.
Yeah.
Thanks for checking in with us, and we're glad we could tell you something you ought to know about this week.
Yeah.
All right. Have a good week. Bye.
Bye.